2 years into what was supposed to be Vladimir Putin's 3-day special operation, Orthodox Easter brought no peace to the killing fields of Ukraine. Within hours of a 32-hour ceasefire taking effect, Ukrainian forces documented 469 separate Russian violations across the front lines. The sacred truce that should have silenced the guns instead became another battlefield where both Moscow and Kyiv traded accusations of betrayal, while their soldiers continued dying in muddy trenches from Kharkiv to Kherson. This isn't the first time Easter has been stained with blood in this conflict. Last year, Putin's forces launched their failed spring offensive during Holy Week, sending tens of thousands of conscripts into Ukrainian minefields, while their families prayed for victory in Russian Orthodox churches. The pattern reveals something crucial about how this war has evolved beyond military strategy into a contest of civilizational narratives. Putin frames this as defending Orthodox Christianity against Western decadence, yet his forces systematically target Ukrainian churches and murder Orthodox priests who refuse to submit to Moscow's authority. The Easter ceasefire proposal came from Turkey's Erdogan, backed by the Vatican, as global energy prices spiked past $200 per barrel due to the expanding Iran-US conflict in the Persian Gulf. What most observers missed is that both Russia and Ukraine agreed to the truce not out of religious devotion, but because their ammunition stockpiles had reached critically low levels after 44 days of the Iran war disrupted global supply chains. The ceasefire collapsed before dawn on Easter Sunday, when Ukrainian drones struck military targets in Russia's Kursk and Belgorod regions, injuring 5 people according to regional governors. Russian forces responded with a massive barrage of Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, targeting Ukraine's remaining power infrastructure in Kharkiv and Dnipro. By noon, Ukraine's general staff had catalogued violations ranging from small arms fire to artillery strikes, cluster bomb attacks, and electronic warfare jamming across 17 different sectors of the 800-mile front line. The most serious incident occurred near Bakhmut, where Russian Wagner mercenaries advanced 3 kilometers under cover of the supposed ceasefire, overrunning 2 Ukrainian positions before being pushed back in fierce fighting that left dozens dead on both sides. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces used the cover of Easter Sunday to conduct what intelligence sources describe as their deepest strike into Russian territory since the war began, with modified Neptune anti-ship missiles hitting a strategic bomber base near Engels, over 600 miles from the Ukrainian border. The timing wasn't coincidental, as Iran and the United States entered their second day of marathon ceasefire negotiations in Islamabad, hosted by Pakistan's military leadership. Both Moscow and Kyiv recognized that the global focus had shifted away from their grinding attritional warfare toward the more dramatic confrontation playing out across the Persian Gulf and Arabian Peninsula. Vladimir Putin's calculation remains brutally simple. He believes time favors Russia as Western support for Ukraine gradually erodes under economic pressure from the Iran crisis. With oil prices crushing European economies and American voters demanding an end to the costly proxy war in Ukraine to focus resources on the direct confrontation with Tehran, Putin sees his best opportunity in 2 years to achieve decisive territorial gains. President Zelensky faces an impossible strategic dilemma, knowing that every month the Iran-US conflict continues means reduced military aid from Washington and Brussels. This explains Ukraine's increasingly desperate long-range strikes deep into Russian territory, attempting to impose costs that might force Putin toward genuine negotiations. Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei has emerged as an unexpected power broker, with Iranian weapons flowing to both sides while Tehran's confrontation with America provides cover for escalation that would have triggered massive Western intervention just months ago. The failure of US-Iran talks in Pakistan after 21 hours of negotiations means this global crisis will continue destabilizing international attention and resources for months to come. For India, these intersecting conflicts pose extraordinary challenges that Prime Minister Modi's government has struggled to address coherently. India imports over 80% of its oil, and with Persian Gulf supplies disrupted by US-Iran fighting while Russian exports face sanctions and logistical chaos, fuel shortages could reach critical levels by June, according to Malaysia's energy minister, whose country faces similar import dependencies. India's delicate balancing act between Moscow and Washington has become untenable as the conflicts merge into a broader confrontation between authoritarian and democratic blocs. New Delhi's continued purchase of discounted Russian oil, which helped buffer Indian consumers from energy price shocks, now risks American secondary sanctions as the Iran crisis forces Washington toward more aggressive economic warfare measures. The breakdown of the Orthodox Easter ceasefire signals that the Ukraine war will continue indefinitely, meaning India cannot count on a negotiated settlement to resolve the contradictions in its foreign policy. Perhaps most dangerously for India, the precedent of successful territorial aggression by Russia encourages Chinese adventurism along the line of actual control, where Beijing has already begun testing Indian responses with increased patrol activity in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. With American military resources increasingly focused on the Persian Gulf and European NATO allies consumed by the Ukrainian front, India faces the prospect of confronting Chinese pressure with reduced international support. Three scenarios now dominate strategic planning in capitals from New Delhi to Washington. The optimistic case sees both conflicts frozen at current lines as exhaustion forces pragmatic ceasefires, but this requires Putin and Iranian leaders to accept strategic defeats they've shown no willingness to contemplate. The catastrophic scenario involves escalation to tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine coinciding with Iranian closure of the Strait of Hormuz, creating a global economic collapse that makes 2008 look manageable. Most intelligence assessments favor the grinding escalation scenario, where both conflicts continue consuming resources and attention for years while creating space for other revisionist powers to pursue territorial ambitions. Here's the prediction most analysts won't make publicly. By Orthodox Easter 2027, we'll see Chinese military action against Taiwan, calculated on Beijing's assessment that America and its allies lack the bandwidth to simultaneously manage three major military crises across Europe, the Middle East, and the Pacific. The Orthodox Easter ceasefire's collapse reveals the bankruptcy of traditional diplomatic approaches to conflicts that have transcended normal geopolitical boundaries. When religious truces fail and economic pressure only accelerates military competition, we're witnessing the emergence of a new international system where permanent crisis becomes the baseline condition rather than an aberration to be managed and resolved. The question isn't whether these conflicts will escalate further, but whether democratic societies can maintain the economic and political cohesion necessary to prevail in a prolonged confrontation with authoritarian powers who've calculated that chaos serves their interests better than stability serves ours. What happened this Easter Sunday in Ukraine wasn't just another failed ceasefire, but a preview of how warfare will be conducted in an era where the old rules have permanently broken down. Subscribe to Global Briefing Room for daily coverage like this. And tell me in the comments, do you think this escalates further? I want to know what you think.